Body shot. Ooh, that hurt, didn't it?
When the adrenaline starts pumping and you know what you can do with this right hand, it's hard to not do that.
Here are your hosts, Derek G and AJ.
Another high-stakes week is upon us, folks. Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, aims to make his 5th title defense in the UFC already. I feel like the man has had more or less of a short career in the UFC, but already about to be racking up 5 title defenses. Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya, number 2, folks. You cannot forget, Robert the Reaper Whittaker was a former champion himself in the middleweight division. If not for Israel Adesanya. I mean, listen, who's to say that Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles wouldn't be the champ right now? I don't know. I got a whole long spiel I'll go into a little bit later, but for now, let me bring in my co-host, the New Mexico native, the Santa Fe bomber himself. AJ, brother, what is happening with you? Out there, live in Austin, Texas, holding it down for the Bloody Water podcast. How you living, brother?
Man, holding it down in this beautiful state of Texas, brother. I am doing well. There's a whole bunch of national emergencies going on over here, but you know we living right, man. How you been doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing very well. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to catch this UFC 271 live in the flesh. That's always not the case for me. Sometimes I got to watch it back or whatever the case may be. Once again, folks, go to your local sports bar. Do whatever the case may be. Don't go pay your little $5 cover. I don't know if you need to be paying $70 for these types of cards. $75 now, but I will just say if you got the bread, go ahead. Have your little watch party. Do your thing. In big news and notes, folks, for this week, the Happy Warrior ROXANNE MODAFFERI looks to make her last walk in the octagon, man, in the cage against Casey King O'Neill. Brother, that is a tough matchup to have in your retirement fight, but I will say she's currently 4-7 in the UFC. 25-20 in her MMA career, and I just wanted to ask you real quick, in a situation like this, first off, all love to the Happy Warrior ROXANNE MODAFFERI, who has been doing this thing forever. As long as you've been watching the UFC, she's been doing it. As long as you've been watching MMA, she's been a pioneer for women's MMA sports. But what is your thought process on if she does in fact go 26-20, right on? If she goes 25-21, not the worst thing in the world, but do you think as a competitor, you say, all right, man, the gap between my wins and my losses they're getting real close. I think it's time to call it a career. Do you think that came into the thought process for the Happy Warrior?
I think so too, man. Especially being you're getting a little older in life. You want to have your own, dreams and goals, stuff that isn't necessarily fighting or your own career. She's made a lot of success, brother. The Happy Warrior, gets overlooked a lot. But for the longest time, like you said, man, she's been a pioneer in the sport, killing it. I mean, record might not show it, but still a very game opponent. And I think it's just about time that she saw that, that margin closing slowly and surely. Yeah. It's just better to end it on a good note than a bad note. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's ideally what we want, but in this game called mixed martial arts, it oftentimes does not go that way. I will say, once again, it is kind of like the perfect sentiment saying that you have the new generation, the up-and-coming star in Casey King O'Neill, kind of exiting out, you know what I mean? The OG of the game, man, it's only right that it is that way. The passing of the torch, if you will, you know what I'm saying? But in other news, in terms of the OGs, right? Listen, AJ, Andrei Arlovski, this man has been fighting forever. He will continue to. I have a feeling this man's going to be fighting until he's 50 years old. Like, I don't know. At this point, it just seems like it's inevitable. He is seeking his 22nd UFC win in his bout against the hard-hitting heavyweight Jared Vanderaa, brother. If you know anything about Jared Vanderaa, you know the man has hands, capital H's all across the board. But Andrei Arlovski, like I said, man, he can get it done on the floor. He can get it done on the feet. Every time you count him out, he keeps winning. Like we talked about Brian Battle last week, you know what I mean? He's the young version of that. Andrei Arlovski is the OG version of that. First off, do you think the man's going to be fighting till 50? And second off, man, how confident are you in this fight against Jared Vanderaa?
First off, Derek, I feel like I need to. You remember the original Space Jam when MJ had his secret juice,
sauce,
whatever they called
the
it?
secret sauce.
That man, I feel like that Andrei Arlovski has some stuff that nobody needs to call this USADA because this dude is drinking just straight water. Yeah. But still, that's some special water he got going on. I do think he'll be fighting for a little bit longer, especially in the heavyweight. Man, the speed isn't there, so he doesn't need to worry about that. He's got the power. We'll be seeing him at least for a couple more years for sure. This dude's timeless, but. Being confident in the Jared Vanderaa fight, I don't know, man. Like you said, Vanderaa has capital H hands, brother. Hands like a madman. That's a hard fight. It's a real hard fight.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just one moment. But folks, before we get into anything else, man, I do got to just say we have some breaking news. Now, It's rare that we have breaking news here on this show, folks, because we're not reporters in and of ourselves. But when a reporter breaks news, we got a little something for you, folks. So let me jump into it, man. AJ, there's a report that Kayla Harrison, the PFL's lightweight queen, her return to the PFL has hit a sudden roadblock at the 11th hour. Dun, dun, dun. You know, dramatic, all of that good stuff, right? And this was reported by Ariel Helwani, right? So before this was on January 18th, he had noted that basically Kayla Harrison was more or less a lock to sign back with the PFL. The UFC hopes were basically dashed, whatever the case may be. We scroll down a little bit further and we see a new tweet by Ariel Helwani as of today, February 10th of 2022. Talks between Kayla Harrison and the PFL have hit a snag at the 11th hour. I'm told they're not dead, but roadblocks have materialized. She is now assessing her next move and nothing is being ruled out. And the cryptic tweet by Kayla Harrison as of today, change of plans, ? So this is a article by MMA News, so you got to give credit there. But AJ, man, are the odds, is the percentage of Kayla Harrison making a jump to the UFC, potentially setting up a bout with either Juliana Pena or Amanda Nunes, whoever holds the belt at the time, you know what I mean? At women's featherweight, it'll be Nunes. Either way, does the PFL lightweight queen, 155 pounds, remind you, you know what I mean? Make the move to the UFC, jump down to 145. Can we see this happen? Do you think it will happen?
Man, it's looking. I think it's going to, man. All the ducks are in the row. Maybe Uncle Dana showed up with a fat check. I'm hoping that's the case because that'd be crazy to see Kayla Harrison drop down to 145 and get it with one of the all-time GOATs. I'm kind of hoping that's the case, man. I know they're paying a lot at PFL, but I'm hoping Uncle Dana opened up that checkbook and gave some guaranteed cash so we can see a fight of the century. What you think?
Well, I really hope that she does as well. I mean, a lot of people are saying stay in the PFL, make your money, all that good stuff. But I want to see the best fights by the best competitors right now. And the UFC has been able to stage that. It's been the platform for that for many, many years. So if Kayla Harrison and Amanda, so think about it like this. If Kayla Harrison does come to the UFC, right, I think the odds of Amanda Nunes retiring early are a little farther away, even though they're training partners and all that good stuff. Think about it. Amanda Nunes just left American Top Team to form her own gym. It's like, oh, maybe it's getting a little spicy. The narrative is writing itself, man. This is almost like WWE-esque right here, brother. But either way, man, I just wanted to put that out there. On a scale of 1 to 10, though, how big of a news is that to you? Like, how large are you like, oh, my God, this was actually pretty shocking. Did you expect this at all?
I honestly, I did. I would say about a 6 because I did expect this to happen. I mean, with being the biggest, production source of MMA fighting that the UFC is, it's kind of hard to not have them as a player in the negotiations, because you're right. We want to see the best fights at the best times. That's kind of what UFC has always been about. And now that we get the opportunity to kind of see that happen in the women's division as well, it only makes more sense, man. So I'm really hoping that's the case because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what we always want to see, man, is a good scrap. And that bringing Kayla Harrison over, that's exactly what this means, man, is a great scrap.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, man. And with that being said, we're just going to have to await further news because that's really all I got for you at the time right now, folks. So listen, back to UFC 271 because that's what we're talking about here today. AJ, let's get into it. Let's do a little bit of a poster review, brother. And my man, listen, the first poster for these two fighters was pretty cool. They both had the belts. Obviously, only Izzy has it this time. But this is a beautiful poster, brother. And for those who are just listening, you got the hues, you got the pinks and the orange and the dark blues and a little bit of the emerald greens all mixed in. Izzy staring down Rob. I don't know what that face expression is. It's kind of like, a little annoyed. Rob looking back. I don't really like the expressions on each other's faces, to be honest with you, but I think the poster looks beautiful. The big number 2 Roman numerals in the middle, my man. This is going to get a pretty high mark for me, but before I give my score, I want you to just tell the people what you're seeing, and let me see what score are you giving it, 1 to 10.
Man, I like this poster. It's a classic, like the two almost face to face. I don't necessarily really like Bobby Knuckles looking back at it with the weird like pouty face he got going on. Interesting choice right there, but I do like the colors. I didn't know there was any green in there, but it looks like fire's going on. There's some heat there, which I really, really like. I like the 2 with the Roman numeral letter 2 followed with the names in the middle. I really like the design of it. Only critique is that Bobby Knuckles posture. It's a little strange, but man, I'm giving this one like a 7. Still pretty high. I like it, but a little, not the highest.
I mean, listen, but like I said, AJ is going to be the toughest critique all year long, man. I love this poster, to be honest with you. Almost enough. If it weren't for the facial expressions, we'd be going 10, but I'm going to give it a solid 9. So we'll go 7 for you, brother. I'll go 9 because that's how much I enjoy it. And you got to think about it like this as well, right? We talked about all last year how cut and dry, stereotypical the posters were. Just give me a little creativity. I'm going to award you with some points, man. You got to show them a little bit of love. So I'll pull that one out of the way, folks. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of big fights this weekend before we jump into some sleeper fights, man. So obviously we got Izzy versus Rob Whittaker, number 2 for the UFC middleweight championship. Number 4, Alex Perez versus number 9, Matt Schnell is back on as a flyweight bout. This is going to be in the UFC prelims. And I want to actually talk that out, break it down a little bit further a little bit later, but that's going to be a banging matchup. AJ, Alexander Hernandez, he has been giving the UFC a little bit of flack because he is on the early prelims, my man. He's fighting Renato on the early prelims. And if you think about those two names, you might sit there and say, how the hell are they on the early prelims when you have a Kyler Phillips versus MArcelo Rojo on the main card? And in terms of star power and name value, yeah, no, they don't deserve to be on the main card. In terms of an exciting fight, that's going to be a scrap. So obviously it's on the main card. I wanted to ask you, do you think, Alexander Hernandez has his own gripes, Renato Moicano have their own gripes. Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell. These are 2 top 10 ranked fighters in the flyweight division. Alex Perez just came off of a title shot a couple fights ago, and they're on the regular prelim, so we'll take it. But do you think there's any slights here, any disrespect there? Would you feel slighted if you were in their shoes?
100%, Derek. 100%. And you're right. Alexander Hernandez and Renato Moicano, they have a little bit of gripe going with the UFC, but the talent of work they've put in just the recent months, man, just the recent years is crazy. And Renato Moicano is an absolute legend in the game. So it's a little more shade being thrown right there. I can see why Alex Hernandez, maybe, the early prelims is just unjust in general, but definitely I could see the prelims, maybe, the featured prelim. I still wouldn't be too upset right there for Alexander the Great. But yeah, man, I feel like there's a lot of shade being thrown right there, especially when you have, like you said, you have a Kyler Phillips, you have there's another one. The Nasrat, Bobby Green, I can kind of see where, you could get a little bit shade thrown for Nasrat. Bobby Green's a king, so he deserves the main event, but there's still some moving and shaking to be done. If I was either Alexander Hernandez or Renato Moicano, I would definitely be slighted. Same thing, man. Alex Perez as well as Matt Schnell. I feel like Matt Schnell, has a little bit more clout, or maybe not clout, but recognition towards the higher matches. Same thing, Perez. They have that championship opportunity this past fight where he's able to get a little bit higher in the rankings, but still, man, I'd be a little upset. What about you?
I would feel a little bit slighted myself. If the pay is the same, regardless if you're on the main card or on the prelims, then it doesn't really matter. But just in terms of the name recognition, what you've done for the company, it's kind of like, damn, bro. Prelims, early prelims? Okay, all right. I do think Nasrat Haqparast does deserve to be on the main card because I think for people who don't watch the fights like that, they don't understand how great and talented of a boxer this man is. And a boxing match between Bobby Green and Nasrat, that is a fireworks show right there. AJ, former UFC flyweight, Jussier Formiga. He is actually fighting Felipe Bunes at flyweight main event over here at LFA this Friday. So the day that this episode is dropping, we record these on Thursdays the day before, folks. So tune in to LFA. That is on UFC Fight Pass. Should probably be taking place around 6, 7 o'clock at night. I'm very excited because this is going to be Jussier Formiga's first fight since he got cut from the UFC or released or parted ways, however you want to go about it. AJ, we always talked about it when we would talk about Davis and Figueiredo, when we would talk about just kind of the top tier mix in the men's flyweight division in the UFC, how one of the biggest wins that Figueiredo had was over Jussier Formiga. I think, did Formiga stop him on leg, or did Figueiredo stop him on leg kicks, or if maybe Formiga had stopped somebody on leg kicks? I just remember leg kicks, devastating Jussier Formiga. How excited are you to see that this man's getting a new opportunity main event slot in the LFA?
Very excited, Derek, especially because those lower, smaller weight divisions aren't really pronounced anywhere else. They're barely pronounced in the UFC. So I'm excited Jussier Formiga is getting his shot to kind of get a little bit more fame back, a little bit more clout, and kind of keep on the roll, man. It's rough when you see these dudes part ways with the UFC and you never hear from them again. So I'm excited to see Jussier Formiga back at it, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. And AJ, man, you just reminded me right now, and I'm doing something that I don't normally do, and I'm gonna go pull up my cell phone out right now, and I'm gonna look up something that I had just sent you the other day, man. And this was in the same vein of like, letting go some of these fighters. Remember, I just sent you a dump of like 10 fighters that just got cut from the UFC, folks. I'm just gonna rattle off a couple of names, and if you're surprised, I mean, I understand because I'm a little surprised too. So we have the likes of Jordan Williams, the former middleweight / welterweight dude, came off of the Contender Series, right? Has a win over Gregory Rodriguez, right? That Jordan Williams cut from the UFC. Sean Soriano cut from the UFC. Domingo Piarte cut from the UFC. Sasha Palatnikov out of Hong Kong, cut from the UFC, my lord. Andre Ewell, right? Very lanky, tall, featherweight, you know what I mean? Very good striker, cut from the UFC. Mallory Martin, Dakota Bush, Gustavo Lopez, Colin Anglin, all cut from the UFC. And you gave me a very poignant reply. You said, Harry Bush too, man. Talking about Dakota Bush, they're trimming all the fat. And I agree with you, brother. They're trimming a lot of fat. So when you talk about these people, thankfully getting another opportunity in another promotion, and LFA obviously is one of those farm systems for the UFC. So it's like you do good in the LFA, you could obviously make your way back to the UFC. For Formiga, he's a little advanced in age, so I don't know the possibility of that. But for all these other names that I just talked about, AJ, aside from just cutting or trimming the fat and stuff like that, man, do you have any other justification for why you think the UFC is just cutting all these fighters? Is it because they're signing so many from the Contender Series, or what's happening here?
Man, I would only imagine, especially for dudes like Sasha Palatnikov, Andre Ewell, like all these names that we're so familiar with, I would imagine it has to be contract disputes, something in that vein, because that's absolutely crazy, man. Like you sent that list of people, I was sitting there like, damn, like literally, like I was almost like flabbergasted, bro. I didn't know what to say. I was like, Jesus, there's a lot. Like they're literally just left and right sending down that ban hammer. I would have to imagine it has to be like contract disputes, because there a lot of those fighters, yeah, sure, they're not, knocking people out left to right, having all these wins like we like to see, but they're still getting some dubs on. Like you said, beating RoboCop is one hell of an achievement, and you still get cut. It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And these are fighters that we've literally been talking about day in and day out over the past year or two, you know what I mean? Just kind of doing it. And so it's like, just cut, boom, just like that. Okay, that's fine. It is what it is. Hopefully they can make their way back. Like a fighter like a Mallory Martin, I'm hoping that she can maybe get a shot in the LFA or go back to Invicta or whatever, because that's where she came from originally, was Invicta. Get a couple more wins and then find her way back to the UFC, because she had a rough string of luck, you know what I mean? But, man, things like this happen. This is the fight game, folks. So in terms of the news and notes, I think that's just about it. That's pretty much all the big fights this weekend. One big fight that I was very happy to announce by another former UFC fighter got scrapped, AJ, and it kind of sucks because COVID's still a thing, obviously, right? Depending on where you go. Some places it's not, right? But depending on where you go, COVID's still a thing, all that. And this is still impacting fights. So Bibiano Fernandez versus John Lineker at 145 pounds, for the men's featherweight championship for one championship, right? That bout gets scrapped. John Lineker, hands of stone, John Lineker, right? He gets COVID, out of the fight. Very, very sad. I was very excited for that fight, like very excited. So no featherweight championship for one championship this weekend, but nonetheless, we still have what I think it's called One Championship Bad Blood is the event happening this weekend. So lots of fun fights for you to go see. Go check it out at your sports bar. Go stream it, at home, whatever the case may be. Do you, folks. All right. Drop a like, subscribe, all of the fun stuff, folks. BloodyWaterPodcast.com is the home, the hub, where you can find just about everything for us. You could hit up our merch. You could listen to the show for free. You could find all the links to watch it: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever the case may be. YouTube, first and foremost. Almost at 340 subscribers over here on YouTube, folks. So we're slowly but surely paving our way up to 400, folks. And that is the name of the game, like slow and steady. The hare, or the hare and the tortoise or something like that. AJ, that sound about right? Listen, man, we appreciate you guys. And if you do appreciate us, share the show, man. We're doing this week in and week out. We're grinding on a week-to-week basis. We've been doing this for a very long time. And to start the year, we're not doing too bad, right? I'm not doing too hot. But AJ, you rocking it. 14-7 on the year. I am 9-12, and we have 5 fights this weekend that can potentially change the tide and see where we can go. So all of the nonsense aside, AJ, let's get into some sleepers, brother.
It's time for some fight night.
If you ain't paying attention, you're gonna sleep on me and I'm gonna wake you up.
All right, brother. So I got a sleeper to start us off this weekend, man. And I'm kind of excited about this because if you're watching this, folks, you see a little unorthodox name that we got over here. You got an unorthodox headshot, all that. Listen, my man, I got number 45 ranked Jeremiah Wells versus the non-ranked Blood Diamond, folks. So this is what everyone's calling this dude, Blood Diamond. His name is Mike Mathetha, if that is how you pronounce it. I apologize if I butchered it because literally everybody calls him Blood Diamond. But listen, man, this is a dude. This is another one coming out of City Kickboxing, right? Another evolution of the program that is City Kickboxing. Great Muay Thai fighter, man. He could eat 5 shots in the pocket and throw a head kick right there, start you in moments, just like Israel Adesanya. Very Israel Adesanya-esque in terms of the way he could throw that head kick. But he is facing a problem in Jeremiah Wells, my man. And I think this is going to be a very fun matchup in the welterweight division. But I wanted to ask you first and foremost, my man, do you know anything about Blood Diamond? Have you heard about him in his very short MMA career, 3-0?
Man, the first time I heard about him was on the Embedded series where Izzy was talking about his training partners. You got to go check out Mike Blood Diamond. I was like, Blood Diamond? Like, all right. I like the name. It's intriguing. Yeah. And he's a scrapper being put on by Izzy Adesanya. You got to check him out. Honestly, though, a little hard to find some fights. I was able to find a couple clips, a couple, previews of sorts. But full fights was really rough to see. So I haven't really had too much on it, man.
Absolutely. No, same exact thing here. I'm over here. I'm scrounging the internet. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, what can I find on this dude? All I can find is like Muay Thai fights. You know, I saw he had a first round submission victory, in his second career MMA fight, all that good stuff. But I think the main point that I want to take away from this is that Jeremiah Wells is an absolute powerhouse, right? One of his main game plans is to take you down and to ground and pound you into oblivion. But if he's not able to do that, he can catch you with a clean right hand, a nice left hook, whatever the case may be. He can do what he did to Worley Alves in his last fight, which was a second round knockout. Not a TKO, folks, a knockout. He hit him with that right hand when he didn't see it coming, and that was lights out from there. The man is 35 years old. He is on a mission to get to a level of contention in the UFC. He wants a belt, and at this point, Blood Diamond is the one person that's standing in his way. This is fresh food from my man Jeremiah Wells. But this is also an opportunity for Blood Diamond, who has incredible striking, who has, it seems to be, a granite chin and an incredible amount of dexterity in the legs and the arms to put on a show and to kind of put City Kickboxing back on the map. Now, Carlos Ulberg is also going to be fighting this weekend. Now, he is representing City Kickboxing as well, but he dropped his UFC debut. So this is the opportunity for a City Kickboxing fighter to actually get that UFC debut dub, but I don't know if it's going to happen against Jeremiah Wells. The big thing that I want to take away from this, folks, is that Jeremiah Wells, 5'9", 74-inch reach, switch fighter. Blood Diamond, 5'11", 76-inch reach, switch fighter. This is going to be a rangy type of contest, lots of striking, but if Jeremiah Wells is smart, he's going to try to get the fight to the ground, and like I said, take away all of the great advantages that a Blood Diamond has. However, if he can't get that down, expect fireworks, folks. This is why this is a sleeper. This is opening the card for a reason. AJ, you talk about it all the time. Sometimes there's a reason why they have this specific bout to open up the early prelims, man, where it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass, where you're not even going to be able to see it. It's still going to be very important because, you know what I mean, bout placement is a real thing. So that is my first sleeper, man. You got overall 5 knockouts between the two fighters, in their very short careers overall. 9-2 for Wells, 3-0 for Blood Diamond. Should be a banger. We don't know too much about Blood Diamond, but this is the opportunity to find out, man. So I wanted to make it my sleeper. Any thoughts on that?
Well, you talked about Wells and his power, man, and that's exactly what it is. This dude, good striking, better wrestling, crazy power. Wells is an absolute animal, and he's been coming forward the entire time. But don't be sleeping on Blood Diamond, man. He's very slick on the ground, has amazing striking, and that dexterity to kick you in the head when they're in the clinch is a talent that is very impressive. So this is a banger of a fight. When I saw you put this one in the Slack, I was like, oh, yeah. I almost chose this one as my sleeper because it is going to be insane fight, man.
Absolutely. And the last little caveat that I have on this is one thing that I think Blood Diamond could take advantage of for Jeremiah Wells. He has a propensity to overextend himself and keep that chin a little high up in the air when he's striking. You do that, you catch a nasty shin to your chin, man. Baseball bat, gonna be ugly. But that is my sleeper, 170 pounds. AJ, let's talk about it. Carlos Ulberg, another City Kickboxing fighter versus the Water Buffalo Fabio Charant, number 84 versus number 102. I love this matchup, brother. Why did you make it your sleeper?
Man, this one, a whole bunch of reasons, Derek. I made this one a sleeper because both fighters, they're coming off L's, so you know they got something to prove. Carlos Ulberg setting it off for City Kickboxing, man, came to the UFC on some heat, or excuse me, Fabio Charant, came into the UFC off some heat, but was on the wrong side of a fire since he's been entering the octagon, man. Has a ton of power, likes to sit back, will lull you into that gaze, kind of like a Sam Alvey, kind of like oh man, I just forgot the guy's name.
T Wood.
Thank you so much, Derek. T Wood. How could I forget T Wood? Anyway, draw you kind of in and then land some serious bombs. Homeboy is fast in the blitz and has a banger of a left hand. Absolute power. His nickname's very on point with the Water Buffalo because this dude is for real in the power game. But Ulberg is nothing to mess with, man. He's very long, tall, a very dynamic striker coming out of City Kickboxing. So you're not really expecting too much different, you know. Very good on the ground, amazing striker, long, lanky, very fast. Izzy was saying he's his hardest sparring opponent for this camp. A lot of clout coming from Izzy saying that, man. Ulberg, very fast, carries a lot of power, and watch for those snappy kicks. And like I said before, Derek, I chose this one as a sleeper because both dudes have a little bit of something to prove, man. A little chip on their shoulders, something to come back to, you know, the boys and say, yeah, I know I got mine. I got one back. Always a good feeling. And they both have the tools to get a flashy finish, whether it's the power of Charant or whether it's the flash and the style of Ulberg. This one is going to be very, very exciting. Ulberg is setting the tempo. I guess technically Blood Diamond setting the tempo for the City Kickboxing camp. But Ulberg's right there, man. He's going to keep that fire going for the boys in the back. And Charant might be fighting for his career. So there's that little bit of extra oomph that kind of pushes both fighters in the direction. Derek, which one do you think has more pressure? The guy fighting for the teammates in the back, you got your homies ready to scrap, or the guy fighting for his livelihood? What you think?
Well, it's an interesting scenario, right? Because you got 3 City Kickboxing fighters on this card, and the last thing you want to do is to drop, like let's say that for whatever reason, Blood Diamond and Ulberg lose, right? You went 0-2 for City Kickboxing. Now Izzy's the only one left. It's like that locker room is going to be rough, right? So you don't want that. However, I do think there's a little bit more pressure for Fabio Charant. And the reason why is because, brother, he wins the LFA light heavyweight championship, gets his shot in the UFC, drops 0-2. I think he gets knocked out in both fights, right? It's like how a twist of turns happen, brother. It's like you was literally living sky high. You're the champion. Next thing you know, you're literally fighting for your career, like you said. You saw the UFC is making all these cuts and all that, man. We're not going to sit here and say that Charant's on the chopping block because he was, I mean, listen, in his fight against William Knight, he was winning until he wasn't. Like, that's the thing. Is like I thought he was on pace to win the fight very easily, and then William Knight just hits him with that nuclear bomb in his hand and calls it a night. Speaking of that, William Knight is actually fighting on this card. So, you know, what are the coincidences? He better get a win over here, man. Both of these dudes better get some wins. But I do think Charant has a little bit more to lose just because Ulberg isn't going to be on the chopping block. Charant, though, man, you get knocked out 3 fights in a row. I mean, that's not what you want. You lose a very one-sided decision. That's not what you want. Let's remember Carlos Ulberg, man, before he lost his fight inevitably to Kennedy and Nzechukwu, right? He was winning the fight, the whole entire fight until he wasn't. Once again, man. So both of these dudes got a lot of pressure, but I think the Water Buffalo got a little bit more pressure, brother. I will just say on this, the last thing that I have is, let me see. We have 0 knockouts on the board for Fabio Charant. And a lot of people could look at him as, like you said, the Sam Alvey, the T Wood approach. Like he's going to sit back, blow you back into that power. He has it all day, man. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to take the fight to the ground and get the submission, though. You know what I mean? I mean, he has the chops in him. And let me see. His last submission win came about 5 fights ago, man. So when he did win the LFA championship, it was a unanimous decision 5-round win. You know, he has the cardio. Let's see if Ulberg does, because he didn't have it in that 3-round fight against Kennedy and Nzechukwu. All right, brother. Great sleeper right there. But before we move on, I do want to just, not do that. I do want to talk about a couple other fights real fast, you know what I mean? On the prelims, all that fun stuff, right? So let's see what we have here, man. William Knight versus Maxime Grishin, AJ. That sounds like a fun fight if you ask me, brother. And let me just move over to it. In terms of the UFC, my man. What do you think of the fight overall? These are two big boys right here. I mean, William Knight got all of the power in the world. Maxime Grishin, he also has all the power in the world, except he has a little caveat to his game. He's a little more well-rounded. He can get the fight to the ground. He can really take the MMA approach to it and get a big dub on the board, man. Like, it looks like right now he's a -170 favorite, and I like those odds. I think those odds make a lot of sense to me. But a lot of people would look at William Knight and say, oh, but he's the powerhouse. He's this, he's that. You know, he's going to get the dub. What are your impressions of this off of the bat?
A lot more well-rounded of a fighter is Maxime Grishin. I agree with you, Derek, and I think the odds make a lot of sense because, like you pointed out in the Fabio Sharon fight, Fabio was winning that scrap until he stepped in and literally just got tagged up by William Knight. I mean, you can see the picture right there. William Knight is much more of a thick beast than Maxime Grisham, but Grisham has the power to go as well, man, and he's got the gas tank, he's got the experience. It's 31-9 to 10-2. You can easily see how the experience gap is there. So a much more well-rounded fighter, but Maxime Grisham's coming off an L to Dustin Jacoby. He's fought a lot of the greats like Marcin Tybura. His list isn't as deep as far as like talent level, but as far as number of fights and time in the octagon, he's been doing it for a long time. And he's been the PFL for a very long time until he came into the UFC. Yeah. I feel like Maxime Grisham's the better fighter, but the better fighter doesn't always win. Yeah. So this one's a little toss-up for me. I personally like William Knight a little bit more just because he always has that dynamite in the hands and can catch you when you're coming in. But Maxime Grisham is a very good pick, a little safer of a pick, if you will. But there's some money going for William Knight, man. He can always get you caught up.
He can definitely get the win by knockout, but that's the number one approach for him, right? I think that's what he was saying coming into this fight, that he wants to come in and finish the fight and all that. But for Maxime Grishin, folks, let's not forget that that loss against Dustin Jacoby was very controversial. A lot of people thought Maxime Grishin won that fight. Grishin himself, he was like, dude, I won the fight. What are you talking about? And I think his length is going to give William Knight some problems, man. 6'3" to 5'10", 78-inch reach to 73-inch reach, a little bit longer legs, all that good stuff, man. So he's a little more well-rounded, right? He wins by 29% by decision, 19% by submission, 52% by knockout. And like you said, the dude got over 30 wins. So what are we talking about here, man? We also got the match that I talked about, just a little bit earlier, man. Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell, man. So this is going to be a fun matchup over here on the prelims, right? We were supposed to see this, a couple of weeks back, man, maybe even a couple months back, but this bout got pushed back, rescheduled, all that. I really like Alex Perez in this fight, but Matt Schnell is a very dangerous fighter as well, and we know this, right? Perez a little more experienced, both fighters coming off of a loss. Schnell, he is the taller, longer fighter, so I think that has its advantages right there. Interesting that their leg reach is the same. Goes to show some people just got really long torsos and all that good stuff, man. But when it comes down to being a well-rounded fighter, both of these dudes are very, very well-rounded. Who do you like in this fight?
Man, I like Alex Perez. I mean, nothing against Matt Schnell. I definitely think he's a banger of a fighter. They just had to cancel this fight a couple times, so it always makes me wonder what's going on there. I've been a big fan of Perez for a while, and I think he's going to be coming into scrap real tough this one. I like him a little bit better, but Matt Schnell is also, I don't remember you saying the odds, but he might be a dog in this one.
Matt Schnell is a plus 300 underdog with a minus 380 favorite comeback coming for Alex Perez, man. And it's interesting, though, because when you look at these numbers right here, I mean, for significant strikes, these dudes are pretty equal across the board, man. I mean, a little higher percentage of a striker is Alex Perez as opposed to Matt Schnell. He likes the leg kicks, all that good stuff. And I think Alex Perez gets the fight to the floor. I mean, look at the grappling comparison to Matt Schnell and Alex Perez. So I like Alex Perez just because of the multidimensional nature of him. Matt Schnell, I mean, he did struggle in his last fight, didn't put on the greatest performance. I don't remember who exactly he fought, so I could pull that up right now. But it looks like for Matt Schnell in his last bout, he fought, that's right. Remember Rogerio Bontorin? It ended up being a no contest right there. But his last one was against Tyson Nam, lost against Alexandre Pantoja, win against Jordan Espinosa, win against Luis Smolka. It goes to show the wins he's able to pick up as opposed to when he gets to that top tier fighters, starts to drop the ball a little bit. And we can say Alex Perez is absolutely a top tier fighter. AJ, man, Mana Martinez versus Ronnie Lawrence. I'm just going to say hands, double capitals, all the whole nine. This is another one. Mana Martinez, man, his hands are fresh. Ronnie Lawrence, he is a beast, great submission artist, great wrestler, but don't miss out on this bout, folks. This could have been a sleeper as well right here. Mana Martinez, whether he puts it to the head, he brings it to the breadbasket, the man's hands are impeccable. What do you think about that matchup?
Man, Mana Martinez, dude, this dude is insane. I forget how many first round, second round finishes. I believe he only has one decision win. Dude, this dude is a absolute finisher in the game. He has dropped a couple to Draco Rodriguez, and I think that's actually his only big loss, but a couple big wins for him, man. Casey Jones, Ricky Tercios, he's been a big name as of late. kind of fallen off a little bit as far as the name category, but sticking with the dubs, which I love for Mano Martinez. And like you said, Derek, hands, absolute power in the fist right there against Ronnie Lawrence, who's it's a little closer as far as like the well-roundedness of both fighters. Ronnie Lawrence, very, very talented. This is going to be a big fight for him coming up, man. If he can get a big win against a Mano Martinez, it's going to set him up for good things in the future. So I feel like Martinez has a little bit more at stake, where Lawrence has a little bit more to gain, but they're both kind of in that same category. What you think?
No, I agree with you, man. I mean, I like Mano Martinez in this fight personally just because of the hands factor, but we can't forget Ronnie Lawrence when he stormed onto the UFC scene, man. He got the big knockout in the UFC debut, man. Like, it's a lot of hype between two of these fighters, which is also another interesting thing, which I talk about all the time when you have two really good up-and-coming fighters who have to fight such at like an early point of their career. Like, it doesn't really make sense from a build-up perspective, right? But it goes to show that the UFC could have a little bit of a favorite, quote unquote, in terms of like, okay, we want to build this guy a little bit more than this guy. You know, it's politics, all that good stuff, man. So that should definitely be a fun fight. We talked a little bit just about the grievances of Alexander Hernandez versus Renato Moicano, man. But overall, as a fight, man, a lot on the line for Alexander Hernandez in this fight, brother. If we look at his last five, I mean, it looks like he is 3-2, losses to Thiago Moises and Drew Dober, but wins over Francisco Trinaldo, big win. Chris Grutzmacher, big win, and Mike Breeden, which is not the biggest win, but he did get, he's got a couple knockout wins in those last five, right? Renato Moicano is as experienced as they come, brother. I mean, 15-4-1 overall in his MMA career, and if we're looking at it, folks, his last one was against Jai Herbert. That was a second round rear naked choke. Dropped one to Rafael Fiziev, excuse me. Damir Hadzovic. Apologies, folks. Got the choke win. Listen, man, submission artist versus a knockout artist. Who's going to get the dub?
Oh, man, this one's a little closer to a fight, but personally, man, I like Alexander Hernandez. Derek, there was one name you left off that really always impresses me whenever I see this dude that you got a dub on him, and it's our boy Benny Dariush. You get a knockout win, round one on Benny Dariush, one of the hardest dogs to put out. Yeah. You know you got power, and it might be because he was new to the game, getting a little underestimated, but nobody's been sleeping on Alexander Hernandez since. He's gone up and down. Don't get me wrong, he's gone up and down, but he has some serious power ever since. He's kind of gotten back into his own, and he's been growing. So I like him a lot for this fight, whereas I feel like Renato Moicano stayed a little bit more stagnant, stayed a little bit more in his lane and not necessarily branching out as much, where Hernandez is growing as a fighter, younger in the game, so it makes a little bit more sense. I think I'm taking if I had to guess, I'm taking the underdog on this one with Alexander Hernandez. I think people might like Renato Moicano a little bit more, but I'm going with Hernandez, man.
So Alexander Hernandez is a plus 150 underdog, minus 175 favorite is Moicano. But I will say this, brother, because trust me, I did not forget that he knocked out Benny Dariush. But I will say we cannot rest on our laurels and we cannot live off of the glories of the past. And if we want to talk about glories of the past, well, Renato Moicano has wins over Calvin Kattar and Cub Swanson. So how about that? You know what I'm saying? Win over Benny Dariush is very impressive. And that's why people were so high on him for Alexander Hernandez coming into the UFC. But then when we saw for him losing to Dober, Cowboy Cerrone, remember that was the big fight. Cowboy Cerrone, he thought he was going to come in and starch him, and he got starched himself. Lost to Drew Dober, lost to Thiago Moises. It's just been a little up and down, but should be a fun fight regardless, man. So many fun fights, man. So many fun fights that we actually don't have enough time to talk about all of the fun fights before we need to just jump into these main cards. But I will just say I have one last bout that I just wanted to talk about stylistically, and that is because we have to give a little bit of praise and a little bit of honor and a little bit of respect once again to the Happy Warrior facing off against Casey King O'Neill. AJ, both of these fighters are really good at the same thing, and that is taking the fight to the ground, getting a little bit of ground and pound going, trying to work for a submission, whatever the case may be. However, Casey O'Neill is the younger, fresher, sprier, more athletic version of a Roxanne Modafferi who is a little bit advanced in age. If this fight goes to the ground, does Casey O'Neill have a clear advantage, or is Roxanne Modafferi going to be a little more scrappy on the ground than most people are anticipating?
Man, Roxanne Modafferi is a dog amongst dogs right there, Derek. I genuinely believe it might not be as easy as Casey O'Neill thinking. Although Casey King O'Neill is an absolute savage as well. So Don't get me wrong. She trained out of 10th Planet as well as Extreme Couture. So there is a lot of praise and a lot of push for Casey O'Neill to come in and actually get things done. I feel like the media presence thinks she's going to get it done because everybody overlooks the Happy Warrior except over here on this podcast, man. Except over here on this channel, we know the Happy Warrior can scrap. She's one of the biggest dogs in the entire division, and I think that's going to show once she gets to the ground. The things she was able to do. Who was it? It was No, it was Andrea Lee where she really got the takedowns again. Same thing with Antonina Shevchenko, excuse me. I was butchering the names. Dude, the Happy Warrior has been getting it done for a long time and very underlooked. And I think that's one of her biggest attributes coming into this fight is the fact that everybody thinks she's like, oh, she's already retired. This is just a show of a fight. She's not really going to show up. She's not going to put anything into it. I think that's a huge mistake if that's going to be the thought going into this fight, because the Happy Warrior is an absolute dog in there, man. She's on demon time. She might look like she's, that nerdy nurse, but she's on demon time out there going to get that scrap on. And that's why I like her in this fight.
It's going to be a very dangerous fight, brother. She's going to be motivated as ever. However, sometimes that can be a little bit of a detriment, right? You got a little too much pressure on you. You know what I mean? You got to go try to force something. I will just say if there's any level of disrespect, even though, yes, Casey O'Neill should be the favorite. Yes, she is the new generation of the, women flyweight, right? If there's any disrespect, it's what people are voting on Tapology right now, folks. So let's go take a look. So ROXANNE MODAFFERI versus Casey King O'Neill, right? Obviously, 8-0 is O'Neill. 25-19, 25-20, whatever you want to call it for the Happy Warrior. Let's take a little scroll down, AJ. 9% of voters think that Modafferi has an opportunity to get the dub. 91% in favor of Casey King O'Neill. And sometimes, AJ, this is one of those things where when you have overwhelming support in one direction as opposed to the other, it makes me wonder a little bit. It makes me just sit back and question, maybe this is going to go the other way. You know what I mean? It can't, sometimes you can't have, there's no such thing as a certainty in MMA. So with that being said, man, if there is a live dog right there, ROXANNE MODAFFERI, she could get the job done. However, am I going to go tell you to bet money on MODAFFERI? No, I'm not. But tune in, watch the show, enjoy the show. That's really what it comes down to, right?
100%, man. I feel like that's the MO for ROXANNE MODAFFERI's entire career. She's always been overlooked, so it's not nothing new for her. Yeah. Definitely going to be a scrap of a fight. Definitely tune in for it. Like you said, Derek, maybe not I won't advise you to put some money on it, but tune in because it's going to be a banger.
Absolutely, folks. And lastly, just in fight news, obviously, we're kind of hitting the whole card. We're not going to talk about these last couple of fights. Douglas Silva de Andrade, the powerhouse, the little tank that is Andrade, is fighting Sergey Morozov. That's going to be a very fun fight in the men's bantamweight division. AJ Dobson fighting he's coming from the Dana White's Contender Series. This is a tank of a man, very aggressive, very over-aggressive to a degree, but he's got hands of steel right there, a little bit of wrestling game in him. He's fighting Jacob Malkoun, who is a very, very talented fighter fighting out of Australia. If I am correct on this one, that's going to be a banger matchup. I really like that one. And I think we talked about just about every single other one, man. So let's jump into the main card with all of that being said. But before we do that, folks, we need to drop a like, subscribe, all the good stuff, man. Once again, share it with your friends. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate that. It helps the algorithm, helps the SEO. It helps people find the show when they're looking for the fight content that they need. Because sometimes people, honestly, on YouTube, I get these, notifications for the comments and stuff like that. We're always interacting. Drop a comment, all that stuff, folks. We'll definitely hit you guys back. But people just stumble across the show randomly sometimes. You know what I mean? It's just YouTube suggestions. It pops up a video and they're like, oh, dude, I had no idea. This is great commentary, da-da-da-da-da. We're not sitting on our high horses over here, but I will say, man, it's really high praise. We really love that, man, when people just kind of randomly find us and are like, oh, shit, man, where has this been the whole time? So if we can get a little bit more of that, that would be awesome. Share the show, friends, all that good stuff. You know what time it is. All right, AJ, let's talk main card.
Here's to another main card breakdown, courtesy of your hosts, Derek G and AJ.
All right, brother, we got a 5-fight main card on our hands, and they're all going to be banger matchups, every single one of them. So let's start off with Bobby King Green, number 18 in the lightweight division, versus number 25 ranked Nasrat Haqparast. -150 is Bobby Green with a +125 comeback for Haqparast. Man, this is going to be boxer versus boxer, mano y mano. The only main difference that I have right here, AJ, is that, listen, Bobby Green, he can mix it up a little bit, man. I told you the last time that I saw him was at the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, a grappling match where he lost immediately. It was like he lost his grappling match in 20 seconds or something like that. Got submitted super quick. But the point is I like that he's going out there and challenging himself and saying, I know I'm known for my hands and all that good stuff, but let me go see what my grappling is about. So maybe we'll see a little bit of grappling implemented against Nasrat Haqparast, especially if Haqparast has a little bit of success. Because I'll tell you what, AJ, Haqparast could win this fight. He really could win this fight. One of the things I like about him the most is that Bobby Green is that hands-down, evasive, shoulder roll type fighter. Haqparast is tight guard, cutting off the cage, sidestepping, rarely a stationary target with very solid takedown defense and a left hook / left cross that is an absolute money shot, brother. So when it goes mano-a-mano, boxer versus boxer, who has the edge in this fight in your opinion?
Whew, that's a hard question right there, Derek, because I feel like it's two different. Both have very, very dangerous hands depending on how you fight them. Nasrat, a little bit more classical. Like you said, keeps that high guard, a banger of a left hand. Bobby Green can hit you anytime, anywhere, and he's going to let you know that he did and talk some shit. So he's got the mental game a little bit, man. If I had to give anyone an advantage, I'd probably say Bobby Green just because he's been doing it a little bit longer. And by a little bit longer, I mean what? 15 extra fights, 15 extra wins, not even just fights. Like, I can't even do the math on how many extra fights in total, but 15 extra wins for sure. I give just a little bit of an edge to Bobby Green as far as those things go, because he's a little bit more comfortable, been doing it a little bit longer. But Nasrat Haqparast got some bombs on him, and he can easily get this, maybe not easily get this win, but he can get this win for sure.
So, AJ, in my quick math that I did in my head, it's 17 fights for Haqparast, 40 fights for Bobby Green. I think that translates to a 23-fight difference. So, 23 extra fights Bobby Green has had. That's a lot of experience right there. Listen, man, I wanted to ask you this just because, yeah, I agree with your assessment right there, man. It's just different. Depending on how you fight them, they can definitely just be different here. But do you think that this is one of the things they were talking about? I think Bisping was talking about it or somebody in the commentary. Because Bobby Green keeps his hands down so often, he's firing from the hip. Something that Robert Whittaker does with his jab as well, where he's shooting from the hip. So if you're staring at the eyes of your opponent, you're not really seeing these shots come up. Whereas Nasrat Haqparast, if he's here the whole time, I could see your hand popping out. I could see all of that, folks. So it's like, it's going to be interesting to me because Bobby Green, he's had this very successful style for a long time, man. He's always been known as one of the best strikers in the game, but he also has been a very much a decision fighter. So do you think that the advantage of the hands down type style, man, as opposed to the tight guard is going to play in the eyes of the judges a little bit? Let's think about it. Bobby Green, he got his first knockout win in his last fight. Again, or not first knockout win, but like first in a really long time against Raging Al Iaquinta. He became the first, I think, knockout Raging Al. But do you think right there, brother, that he can continue that, or it's going to go to the judges? And if it does, like I said earlier, that traditional style versus the hands down, it could influence the judges a little bit. I don't know. What do you think?
I definitely think it has some influence on the judges, but it almost kind of depends on how the judges are looking. Mm-hmm. Are they looking for that flash kind of style, or do they feel like the classic is the more appropriate how you should be fighting? Mm-hmm. I mean, me personally, I like the style of Bobby Green, man. If you've ever fought somebody with their hands down where you're thinking, I'm going to touch this dude's chin all day. Next thing you know, you eat one in the mouth that you didn't see coming. It's a little harder of a fight. I know in striking, they always teach, watch the shoulders, watch that shoulder pop. We're going to see it coming. You don't see that happen with the hands just flying down and pop you in the mouth, man. I personally give the little bit of like swagger edge, like if I see somebody striking like that, constantly landing bombs, dipping the shoulder roll, telling them, that hit me on the shoulder, bro, you didn't even connect. I give that a little bit more edge, at least in my judging eyes, but it depends on how they see it. So I can see it going either way to the judges. I don't know if we're going to see a knockout win. I mean, we always talk about how, when you have two jiu-jitsu guys going at it, fire versus fire usually ends up in a standing match. Yeah. I don't see that happening this way where we have two boxers going to end up in a jiu-jitsu match. Not so much. We might see some fireworks, but it could happen. You never know. And that's why I like Bobby Green, that he's been working on those other skills. I originally thought, I was like, Nasrat probably has, a little bit better ground game than Bobby Green. But, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe not, man. Maybe Bobby Green's been working on that. We'll see. What do you think?
Well, brother, I'm going to say this. Nasrat Haqparast has been taken down 4 times in his last fight. Bobby Green has landed 9 takedowns in his last 5 fights. So my question to you, to flip this back on you, is do you think Bobby Green gets this fight to the ground? And if he does, how many takedowns does he land in this fight?
Man, that'd be wild, because I think if Bobby Green does get the fight to the ground, he's going to be really on track for that decision win. I'm thinking over under 3. I'd probably say under. But still, even at that, that's still a lot of takedowns for a striker.
Well, think about it, brother. Dan Hooker got 3 takedowns on Nasrat Haqparast in his last fight. And we're not really going to count that because Haqparast took that in like a week, right? It was like such a short notice, weird thing for both of these fighters. That's kind of just, to me, just like, all right, we'll put that out there because he has a big win against Rafa Garcia, a great wrestler who was not able to take Nasrat Haqparast down. A big win against Alexander Munoz, where Munoz took him down once. Drew Dober, Drew Dober wasn't able to take him down at all. And then he also has a win over Joaquim Silva. So those are all impressive wins, man. When it comes down to it, these are two southpaws. It's going to be interesting who wins that outside foot battle, but I'm just really excited to see this fight. I think Bobby Green, he might be able to win this fight on volume because he touches up his opponent a little bit more. Lots of leg kicks, jabs, just random little strikes, you know what I mean? Kind of like that Brian Battle style where he's just kind of popping stuff at you all the time. When we're talking about work rates, very similar, man. 5.51 significant strikes landed per minute for Green, 5.19 for Nasrat Haqparast, 46% for Haqparast, 51% for Green. So it's going to be a firefight, man. I think it's going to come down to a close decision, in my opinion. But I think that Bobby Green just has a few more tools in his tool belt, and he's a lot more experienced, and I think that's going to win the day for him. Hopefully he does not get robbed, and I say this because Houston, I guess the Houston Commission has been notorious for some bad judging over there. So I'm going with the -150 favorite with Bobby Green, unanimous decision, brother. I am taking the over at 2.5 rounds at -225, brother. What are you thinking?
Man, Derek, I think there's a reason this is the first fight of the pay-per-view, and I think we're going to see fireworks, but I'm also leaning towards that over, man. I'm leaning towards the decision just because I think it's going to be a little harder of a fight for both of these dudes to be able to get the finish. Both of them have very, very solid chins, very good output, so there's not going to be a lot of downtime, I think. So I think we might be in for fight of the night. Who knows? But I think this is going to be a very fun fight either way. I got Green winning by decision, man. I think he just has more tools in the tool belt, like you said, and a little bit more to pull on as far as, whenever the waters get deep and you kind of have to pull out those, those Goggins cookies to kind of get yourself motivated a little bit. And I think Bobby Green has that in the tank. That's why I'm rolling with him for decision, man. I think it's going to be a fun fight either way. But like I said, I'm rocking Bobby Green by decision.
Yeah, I like the pick, man. I mean, overall, Nasrat Haqparast, like I said, he's one of those dudes where I think he can get it done. Look at the odds, man. It's not like it's crazy. It's +125, -150. So Haqparast has a chance, but I do agree. This could be a fight of the night, man. Could be a fight of the night. All right, brother. We got number 17th ranked, the Matrix, Kyler Phillips, man, who was coming off of a rough loss in his last fight to Raulian Paiva, which was a majority decision loss. Kind of controversial. Either way, he's fighting 124 ranked Marcelo Rojo. So some could be asking, why is this bout taking place? And I'll tell you why. Both of these dudes got hands, brother. However, Rojo did get broken in his last fight, AJ. You saw it happen in real time, but he was fighting one of the best strikers to do it in the featherweight division, which is Charles Jourdain. And let me just take a look right now, if you do not mind, AJ, because now that I'm thinking about it, for Marcelo Rojo, if his last fight was against Charles Jourdain, who's a featherweight, this fight's taking place at bantamweight. So did he go down a weight class? Let's take a look. Yes, he actually has gone down a weight class from featherweight to bantamweight. And let me see, in his combate fights, okay, but in his combate fights, he was basically fighting at bantamweight. So now this makes a lot more sense. So in his UFC debut, he stepped up a weight class to fight Charles Jourdain. Now he's jumping down to bantamweight. I probably should have known this before I made my picks over here, but either way, I don't think it's going to change too much, to be honest with you. I really like Marcelo Rojo as a fighter. I think he's a banger, but I do think that he's going to be a step slower in this fight. Kyler Phillips has definitely got the speed advantage when it comes down to it, man. He's a very technical striker, high strike rate. And would you agree with me when I say that Kyler Phillips is an avalanche fighter, a downhill fighter? And what I mean by that is once he gets going, he's hard to stop. But if you can disrupt that flow, if you could disrupt all of those strikes coming up on you, counting up, building up and all that, then Rojo can have some success, man. He's got a good ground game, big bombs, and he's not afraid to turn a classic bout into a dogfight, brother. So what do you think about that?
Man, this one I marked once I saw this. It's hard to not be a step behind Kyler Phillips because this dude is fast. He's smooth. He'll hit you with some stuff. But you talked about Marcelo Rojo getting broken in his last fight. Man, I got to say the same thing for Kyler Phillips. There's nothing more devastating. We've talked about it a lot of the times where you're over there swinging. You got your guy dropped. You're hitting him hard. He's dropping to the ground, but you can't get the finish. And then through the fight, he starts coming back, hitting you with some stuff. Now he's a step ahead. And that's exactly what we saw in the Raulian Paiva fight. Kyler Phillips had him basically dead to rights. And if that round was 10 seconds longer, it would have been a finish. That's not the case, though, man. The buzzer go. I believe it's Keith Peterson. They gave him the clock, man. That's one of my favorite sayings since seeing that fight. They gave him the clock. You got 10 seconds. Might as well let him finish it out. But man, Kyler Phillips, once that happened, then he started losing that step. That gas tank started diminishing. We started seeing the holes in the game that were able to be exploited. And when you're sitting there and you're punching a guy that in round one, you were dropping him. Now he's sitting there eating it, smiling at you, coming back. That's a very devastating mindset to ever happen to you. And I feel like both of these fighters kind of have that in common, where they had a rough one in their last one, so they need to be coming back for this one. I agree with you, Derek. Kyler Phillips is very much a downhill fighter, but if there's somebody who's going to be interrupting that flow, it's Marcelo Rojo. This dude is an absolute dog in the cage, and he might be maybe not as diverse, maybe not as skilled, but this dude is very comfortable in the pocket, has very sneaky knees, and a finisher, Derek. More classic of a striker, very sharp, but a finisher is why I like Marcelo in this fight. I'm still leaning one way. I'll let the cat out of the bag. I'm leaning towards Phillips on this, man. It's hard to not like this dude just because of how flashy he is striking, but Marcelo Rojo is easily a dog in this fight, a live dog. You can get some money off of Rojo because he has the power to get things done, man. What you think?
Yeah. Well, you know who Marcelo Rojo reminds me of? Well, this matchup in total, he reminds me of being the Steven Peterson in the Julian Erosa versus Steven Peterson matchup, where I said it in the fight. I was like, I like Erosa, but if there's anybody who can get this job done, it's Steven Peterson. And I think the same thing about Marcelo Rojo. I think that's why he's on the main card, even though he dropped his UFC debut. Very exciting fighter. And like I said, when you disrupt the flow of a Kyler Phillips and you can turn it into a dogfight, things can get messy, create sprawls, get both of these dudes tired, and then figure out, okay, we're both tired. Who's going to gut this one out? You know what I mean? Who's going to get the job done? Both of them were broken in different respective ways in their last fights, but it should be fun either way. I did want to just make a note of this, man. I always talk about it for Kyler Phillips. He is a Nikita Kai fighter, and what that means is it's like 5 or 6 or 8 or 9 different martial arts all blended into one. That's what he came up under. I think his sensei or professor, or whatever you want to call it, is one of the dudes who created Nikita Kai. But he has a very diverse skill set, man. Marcelo Rojo does as well, but Kyler Phillips can get the job done on the floor, get it done on the feet. Crazy array of strikes. For Marcelo Rojo, man, even though he can mix it up very well, he does his best work when his opponent's back is up against the cage. That's when his best work is done, where he could press you up there, you have nowhere to go, and he can land the big bombs on you. I just think Kyler Phillips is going to be a little bit more movement base, is not going to be a stationary target, not going to allow himself to just get stuck up there. And if anything, he's going to be mixing up these strikes where he mixes up his punches and his kicks seamlessly in these combinations, right? For Marcelo Rojo, the reason why I was just a little bit concerned is because Charles Jourdain said when he fought him during midway through the fight, he was like, oh, I could tell I'm about to finish this dude. I saw it, you could feel it in the eyes. You could see okay, this dude's breaking little by little. For Kyler Phillips, it was just a different type of broken. It's like, dude, I smashed you. Why are you still here? It was that type of broken. So if he can overcome that, working at the MMA Lab, a very prestigious gym out there in Phoenix, Arizona, I believe, or Scottsdale, or somewhere in Arizona, right? If he can overcome that, I think that he's on track to, get a very nice downhill victory over here against Marcelo Rojo. But the question is, AJ, do you agree with the odds? Because like you're saying, there's kind of live dog here for Rojo. Minus 400 for Phillips. They're not really showing Rojo any respect here. This is a dude who's got a decorated career, man. A lot of fights in Combate, 16-7 overall, 8 knockouts, 6 submissions. I mean, do you think they're the odds are very basically, do you agree with the odds? Yes or no?
Man, they're throwing some shade to my boy Rojo. I agree with the odds in the sense that I think Kyler Phillips is definitely the favorite going into this fight, but minus 400 to a plus 310 comeback, that's a little skewed, man. I mean, I was thinking a little bit more like 200 to 150 around there, but I mean, I guess agree, but not that dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I could kind of look at it I'll give a little foreshadowing to the main event for Adesanya Whittaker. It's minus 280 for Adesanya, plus 230 for Whittaker. I mean, I could see those odds for this fight, but minus 400. If you look at it, I'm actually looking at it right now. That means that Kyler Phillips is the biggest favorite on the card, and literally Rojo is the biggest underdog on the card. So we'll see what happens here. I think that Rojo can make it close. I'm still leaning Phillips, though. What it comes down to is I'm leaning Phillips, and I think Phillips can actually get a finish here, man. I think that he can get a late round finish. We saw Rojo get broken in the first fight. The man's only been knocked out once, and that was that Jourdain fight. He's been submitted 4 times, and he's lost 2 decisions. But Kyler Phillips, man, I mean, like I said, when he puts it on you, man, he puts it on you. So maybe he'll take a little bit of a reserved approach. That's really what it comes down to. If he wants to be more patient, doesn't want to wear out that gas tank, could have a little PTSD from the last fight, we might see a decision, but I think he can get a finish. But to play it safe, I'll probably rock with a decision. With the over for Kyler Phillips on 2.5 rounds, and the over cashes in at plus 130, brother. The odds makers think that this fight's going to end early, man. So what do you think? Who do you got, and what do you think?
Man, I'm with the odds makers on this one, man. I think this one's gonna end early, and like I said, I'm rocking with Kyler Phillips. I'm going KO round 2. I think he can get it done, especially if he plays it a little smarter than he did. Doesn't have that adrenaline dump. Doesn't try to empty the gas tank to get the finish. Plays it smart. Lands one of those like banger of a heel kicks. Throws something crazy that we don't see coming. Actually gets Marcelo Rojo unexpected. I think that's where his biggest advantage is gonna lie. It's just I like the flashy style, man. I won't lie. I like the flashy style of Kyler Phillips. Even though Rojo is, like I said, a live dog in this fight, I'm rocking with Kyler Phillips KO round 2, man.
Okay. Right on, brother. I mean, that's a bold pick right there. I think Rojo's a little bit more of a dog that's, not going to necessarily allow himself to be put in a spot where he's just going to get starched like that. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll definitely see what happens. AJ, I do have to say that this bout right here, this is, out of all of the bouts on the entire card, AJ, this is the one that I had the most difficulty in choosing. And the reason why is because this is a high-stakes matchup in the middleweight division right here. However, we had a little bit of news that got dropped just recently. Derek Brunson said, win or lose, I'm going to be retiring after 2 fights. That's not what you want to hear in one of the biggest fights of the man's career, right? And when you're fighting the killer gorilla, number 3, Jared Cannonier, man, it's going to be a very tough task. But Derek Brunson, if he's proven anything, he's proven that he's been able to get it done against some of the biggest names in the division. So let's look at his last 5, man. He has a win over Theodoro. He has a win over Ian Heinisch, Edmund Shabazian, Kevin Holland, and Darren Till, which all of those are very impressive names in the middleweight division. But let's just do a little contrast with Jared Cannonier, because I feel like Jared Cannonier is one of those dudes who just kind of gets written off, like overlooked. You know what I mean? Like for whatever reason, he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. So Brunson 5-0, he won all of those fights, right? Cannonier 4-1. His only loss in his last 5 was to Robert Whittaker, the former champion, and let's be honest, Cannonier did get injured in that fight, like early in like the first round or something, like he broke his arm or something. But still, Whittaker, he got the job done. But like I said, all right, so he gets a win over David Branch. He finishes Anderson Silva. He finishes Jack Hermanson, loses to Robert Whittaker, and then decisions Kelvin Gastelum, right? If you had to compare those 2 lists of names, who do you give the edge to in terms of strength of schedule?
Wow,
it's tough, huh?
It's tough. This is I agree with you, Derek. This fight, honestly, the next one as well, I had a very hard time picking both of who I wanted to win. It's rough because did Cannonier fight Silva at his peak?
No.
Not necessarily. No. Is David Branch a hard opponent? Yes. He as hard of opponent as Elias Theodoro? Yeah. I mispronounced that. A little bit harder, in my opinion. That one's a little closer. Ian Heinisch, Edmund Shabazian, Kevin Holland, Darren Till. All of these fighters are very, very tough, but the same thing. Jack Hermanson, Kelvin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles are arguably, if Cannonier didn't injure himself, he could have won that fight. Being injured, excuse me, folks. Being injured and still getting to a decision against Bobby Knuckles is a feat on its own. Yeah. So it's a very hard way to say which one is a little bit better. Personally, I think it's Derek Brunson, man. I give Brunson a lot of heat on this show, but I think he has a harder path since he dropped one to Israel Adesanya.
A rare moment, folks. AJ shows Derek Brunson some love. You got to see it, man. Look at how the tides have turned, man. But listen, I think that it's close. It's comparable. It's close. I'm going to give a little bit of an edge to Jared Cannonier. And the one reason why is because if you look at the last 2 fights for Derek Brunson, really the last 3 fights, he fought 3 strikers, right? 3 strikers with really no grappling pedigree at all. Darren Till, I mean, come on. Once he got to the ground, it was game over. Kevin Holland, once he got to the ground, it was game over. Edmund Shabazian, once he got to the ground, it was game over. Like, there was nothing for them. However, Kelvin Gastelum, yes, he is a striker, right? But this is a dude who goes to wars with everybody and doesn't get finished. Robert Whittaker, great wrestler who never really uses it, former champion, come on. Jack Hermanson, not a great striker, but incredible grappler. Anderson Silva, incredible striker, has some grappling. Obviously, old Anderson Silva doesn't really count. And David Branch can do a little bit of both, right? So I'm going to give a little bit of an edge to Jared Cannonier in this, but let's talk about the matchup, brother. This is what's important right here. Derek Brunson has landed 19 takedowns in his last 5 fights. Literally, the game plan is to big right hand, shoot in for a double, ground and pound, finish the fight. That is the plan for Derek Brunson. There's literally no other plan. There can be no other plan because you're not going to stand up with Jared Cannonier. That's the last ditch effort. That's the last resort. But Jared Cannonier has one aspect of his game that a lot of these other fighters did not have for Derek Brunson. And it could be a detriment, but it could also be a good thing. Jared Cannonier has some of the most devastating leg kicks that you will see in mixed martial arts. Not just leg kicks, but kicks in general. And if there's one thing that Darren Till did not have for Derek Brunson that allowed Derek Brunson to get in on these singles all the time was no knees up the middle, no kicks, no threats of anything but the big 1-2. That's Darren Till special, the 1-2, right? Do you think that the kicks and the multidimensional approach of Jared Cannonier is going to give Derek Brunson issues in terms of being able to close the distance and, come in and get that patented double leg or single leg or trip or whatever? Do you think that Derek Brunson is going to be able to land a bunch of takedowns in this fight?
Man, that's exactly what I was thinking for Jared Cannonier. If he wants a path to victory, he just needs to be spamming those low calf kicks inside, outside, left, or right. Doesn't matter. Just keep spamming them, because the second Derek Brunson starts to shoot on that inside and his leg just goes out, gets kicked to the outside, you can't really shoot that takedown anymore, man. You're halving it. You're in halfway out, halfway in. I think that's the best path for Cannonier, especially if he can stop once that starts happening. The speed kind of gets taken off of Brunson. You're able to stop those takedowns, just like we saw in Jack Hermansson's last fight. Once Sean Strickland was able to stop those takedowns, it's no longer a threat. Then it's just a battle. Then it's just a stand-up fight. If Jared Cannonier can get that done, now that's going to be a very high mountain to climb, a very tall task to get done, because I think Derek Brunson is very determined. He has, and like you said, Derek, he has one path to victory, and he does have hands. He's got power. He can land stuff. He lands that big right bomb of a right hand on you. It's going to hurt. You're going to feel it, but then you're going to get taken down. Then you're going to get ground and pounded. We've seen. I used to give a lot of flack to Derek Brunson because he would just hump his way to victory. But now with his last fight against who was it? Darren Till. We didn't see him just resting on his laurels on the ground. He was actually getting that ground and pound done until the rear naked choke opened up. So, Brunson, he has his path to victory. But if Jared Cannonier can actually, get those calf kicks going, start spamming them inside, outside to the legs, get the speed taken off a little bit, get Derek Brunson thinking about that leg, then that's going to be a better path for Jared Cannonier, man.
Yeah, man. I think that, listen, Jared Cannonier also has a really underrated takedown get-ups, man. He's able to get off of his butt, off of his back, and in unprecedented ways for a lot of these fighters, man. So when you look at his takedown defense, it's 62%. But let's dive into that a little bit deeper, man. So when I look over here, man, and I'm just going to scroll in for the good folks at home. Gastelum obviously didn't take him down. Whittaker, even though the fight, he did end up having Cannonier hurt and did get him on the ground, it wasn't counted as a takedown. But Cannonier, even though he was super hurt, was still able to get up, survive, and end the fight on the feet, all that good stuff, right? So let's see. AJ, Jack Hermansson was able to take him down once, but what happens? Cannonier gets up, comes back, knocks him out. Anderson Silva, no. David Branch took him down 3 times, but Cannonier was able to get up and win the fight. That's what's important, right? Dominic Reyes, no. Jan Blachowicz, 4 takedowns. Glover Teixeira, 3 takedowns. Yanku Talaba, 6 takedowns. But that was the beginning of those careers. Look at the weight difference too, right? You know what I mean? This is when he was a big boy. Now he's over here at middleweight. So since he's been a middleweight, man, it's been, more or less unstoppable in terms of people can't just sit there and hold him down. That is kind of the big point that I have here, folks. So when I move back to, the whole point of Derek Brunson's number one game plan, number one strategy is get the fight to the ground. If that does not happen, brother, who's a better striker? Come on. Listen, give me a percentage wise. How much better of a striker is Cannonier than Derek Brunson?
Oh, 80%, man.
Come on,
80%. It's not really that close.
Yeah, but believe it or not, Derek Brunson, even though, Derek Brunson has a lot more fights, 12 knockouts, right? So, if you go back to old school Derek Brunson, where he was throwing caution to the wind and just throwing his hands, bro, he could knock anybody out. Derek Brunson has hands. He's one of the best to do it. I know he's gotten flack on this program, but I really enjoy Derek Brunson overall as a career. I think he must be respected. If you take the man lightly, you're going to get finished, you're going to get stopped. But if you take Jared Cannonier lightly, you're going to get finished, you're going to get stopped. So that's the big thing right here, man. The one question that I have is, Jared Cannonier uses his rear teep as kind of a jab, as a rangefinder. That's probably not the wisest choice against Derek Brunson, right?
No, 100%, man. You get that kick caught, he's already in on a single leg. It's just one more step closer, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how this game plan goes overall, man. But I think that this is going to be very tactical, and we have seen. So let me just pull it up real fast, just so I can be clear right here for Derek Brunson. A couple of fights, okay, let's look at Israel Adesanya, right? He gets knocked out in the first round. Jacare Souza gets knocked out in the first round. Silva loses a decision, lost to Robert Whittaker. He got knocked out in the first round, right? There's a lot of these fighters where when they can stop the takedown and they can give you the threat of if you shoot on me, brother, I got something for you. Derek Brunson becomes a little ineffective, right? He starts staring in the mirror. Then he has to stand and trade with you. And like I said, that's going to be all Jared Cannonier, in my opinion, personally, my humble opinion. What do I know? But I do agree with the odds a little bit here. Minus 180 for Cannonier, plus 155 for Brunson. However, AJ, this is where I go contradictory right here with everything that I just said. I do think Derek Brunson can win this fight. I absolutely think Derek Brunson can win this fight. I think that if there's any live dog on this card, it is Derek Brunson. And it's almost like, to me, it's almost this Brian Battle situation where I pick against him and he wins. I pick against him and he wins. I pick against him and he wins. And then finally, I'm like, listen, brother, this Gore fight, I just got to go with Gore. This is the one time I think he's going to get it done. And then Battle wins. And I'm just like, God damn it, I should have just fucking picked with him. That's how I feel about Derek Brunson. But I'm going to repeat mistakes of the past, and hopefully that it changes up a little bit. And I'm going with Jared Cannonier in this fight, brother. I think this is going to be a gritty fight. It's tough because I want to call for a knockout. Brunson's been knocked out 5 times. Cannonier has bombs in his hands. But the last knockout that Cannonier had was against Hermanson, Silva, and Branch, right? So, I don't think Brunson's going to put himself in a spot to just get starched out like that. If anything, he's going to get hurt like he does in almost every fight, probably shoot for a single or something like that, and at least save himself till the round ends or whatever. So even though it's boring on this, AJ, the over-under is 2.5 rounds. I'm going to go over. And unanimous decision win for Jared Cannonier, brother. I know it's boring, but I got to go with it. I did pretty good on the over and unders last week, so I'll just put that out there. But who do you got, brother? Who you got and how and why?
Ooh, Derek, this is going to be a very close fight. I agree with you. If there's the livest dog on the card, it is 100% Derek Brunson. And you said you were going, going to repeat the mistakes of history. I'm actually switching it up, bro. I'm going Derek Brunson on this fight. It sounds crazy. If you've ever heard me talk on this show, I give Derek Brunson a lot of heat, but I'm rocking with him on this one, man. I think he just has that flow. He has the energy to kind of come back. He has the momentum. He has the strict game plan of what he's going to get done, and he hasn't veered from it in his last 5 fights, and they've done him very well. That can either be a double-edged sword, a good thing or a bad thing, but I think Derek Brunson's going to work it to his advantage, especially if he comes out as Blonde Brunson, comes out with that tenacity. Can Jared Cannonier get this done 100%? What happens when you stop the takedowns? It's been proven that Derek Brunson is a little ineffective that way. But, man, Jared Cannonier, he might be dropping down. He has dropped down in his last fight. He still has the speed. He still has the power. But I think Derek Brunson can just out-wrestle him. And when you're more strict on that one game plan, I think that's a little bit better for your odds. Maybe he gets shut down. Maybe I don't know what to talk about. And Jared Cannonier just absolutely starches Derek Brunson with a teep up the middle. We see something crazy. But I just think that Derek Brunson is going to be on his P's and Q's, get the takedown, get the ground and pound. I'm also going with the decision, though, with you, Derek. I definitely think this is going to be a longer of a fight. We're going to see a lot of stuff up and down. But me personally, man, I'm rocking Derek Brunson by decision.
Okay. I mean, listen, fair point, fair assessment right there. And I think, to me, I find it difficult to see Brunson winning in any fashion besides decision, personally. But, we'll see what happens right there. All right, AJ. Co-main event, brother. The Black Beast, he steps up once again against Bam Bam, Tai Tuivasa. Number 3 versus number 11. You rarely see a fight like this take place, man, where Derrick Lewis has everything to lose and Tai Tuivasa has literally everything to gain. Except you're stepping in against Derrick Lewis, which is probably got to be one of the scariest things one man could possibly do in his lifetime. However, minus 190 favorite is Lewis, plus 160 for Tuivasa. The odds are a little closer than I thought, man. I thought Lewis would be a bigger favorite. And I just want to say that my whole entire rationale between this fight, AJ, is, listen, I'm sorry. I love Bam Bam, all that good stuff, right? Besides Cyril Gane, who has been able to give Derrick Lewis any trouble? Besides Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov, who's been able to give the man any trouble in any fashion, hurt him, anything? It's hard to name. It's hard to name somebody off the bat.
Latifi.
But come on, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
That's grasping at straws right there.
You feel me? So, like, the point that I have here is that in terms of, like, Derrick Lewis has knocked out just about fucking everybody in his path, right? He's the knockout king, 21 knockouts in his 26 career victories. He's been knocked out 5 times, stopped 5 times really is what I should say, right? 1 submission loss, 2 decision losses. But Cyril Gane is kind of that cloth of like, I'm going to, play combos, I'm going to be in and out, and I'm going to be able to play that game and not get hurt because I'm going to sprint away as soon as you start throwing the bombs, right? Tai Tuivasa is not necessarily that same fighter. We learned Chris Daukaus tried it. Didn't really work out, brother. You try to step in there with the flame Bam Bam has the power. He has all of the power, right? But does he have Derrick Lewis power?
Very close. Maybe the closest we've seen. I don't know, though, man, because I'd give Derrick Lewis the power advantage for sure,
Come
but
on,
not
brother.
by as big of a margin as people are thinking, man. Bam Bam got them mallets for hands.
Let's look at the last fives. How about we do that, right? For Bam Bam, right? We got Sergey Spivak. He loses. He gets, you know what I mean? He gets humped on the ground. Second round submission, done. Stefan Struve knocks him out, right? That's the tower or whatever we call him, right? All right, right on, man. Harry Hunsucker. Are we counting this? Are we really counting that? First round TKO. Okay. Greg Hardy, after getting hurt himself, comes back and, you know what I mean? Gets Greg Hardy out of there. Cool. Augusto Sakai, he gets him out of there. Augusto Sakai, he's just had a rough as of late, man. He's never really been able to get started, all that good stuff. Derrick Lewis, unanimous decision win against Ilir Latifi. He knocks out Alexei Oleinik, knocks out Curtis Blades, loses to Cyril Gane, and then knocks out Chris Daukaus. So in a you know, top 5 strength of schedule, you got to give that to Derrick Lewis, right? If you look at his overall career, you would clearly give it to Derrick Lewis. It's not even a question right there, man. Because when we're talking about knockout wins over, like I said, Curtis Blades, Alexander Volkov, he got the win against Ngannou, but that was what it was. We'll just put that for that, man. So literally, it goes Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou are the hardest punchers in the world right now. It feels like, you know what I mean? Bam Bam, he's up there, but like I said, it's disrespectful to even say that. Like Derrick Lewis will just touch you and put you out. Bam Bam, he got to at least hit you with a couple. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, AJ. Does Bam Bam do what he stereotypically does, where he says, I want to own the center of the cage. I'm going to play my game. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to throw combos, clinch up, do all of that good stuff, get back out, reset, play the game again. Crazy power and speed for a heavyweight, solid chin, but the punches and bunches is what scares me, brother, because you can't do punches and bunches against Derrick Lewis. You can try, but if he opens up and he catches you, I mean, it's night-night. This is basically the Chris Daukaus fight all over again. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, honestly, man, I think Tai Tuivasa doesn't stray too far from his plan because he's been doing that since he's a 3-year-old. You know, he's been walking forward, trying to bang in the streets, and that's exactly what he's going to come in and do. Stay on that front foot, but I agree with you. Those punches and bunches are going to be where it gets dangerous because all it takes is just a clip. You know, Derrick Lewis using your energy against you, and he just catches you on the chin with something clean. Next thing you know, your head's in the stands. He's celebrating, bounding on the ground, you know, humping the ground, doing his whole thing. That's exactly what you don't want for Tai Tuivasa. But Tai Tuivasa can get it done, man. If he plays it just a little bit smarter than just reckless, and just by a little bit, there's not much room for margin right here, man. Margin for error, however you want to phrase it, because Derrick Lewis is very dangerous. But I do think Tai Tuivasa stays on that front foot, stays aggressive. Hopefully doesn't have as long of combos, because that's where he's a little bit more dangerous. But if he's able to get things going, you know, hit 1, 2, 3, bounce out, come back in for some more combos, bounce out and get away, it's going to be a better fight for him. Definitely a scary opponent right here, man. I had a very hard time choosing who's going to win this one.
Brother, I need to ask you just this because I'm just, you know, I visualize fights in my head. I'm sure you do the same thing when you're kind of playing it out. Like, all right, how would this fight happen? Just explain to me, please. Like, Tai Tuivasa, he gets the center of the cage. Does he walk Derrick Lewis down? You know, you think Derrick Lewis is just going to be like, all right, I'm just going to sit back? You know, Derrick Lewis is willing to be a low-volume fighter to just get that one shot. But, like, does he walk Lewis down and then just start putting punches on him? Does Derrick Lewis is just going to shell up? Like, is that, like, how you're envisioning the fight? Because to me, I don't see it that way. I see it where he does the possum, lets Tai Tuivasa come in and then explodes and just says, like, listen, brother. And then Tai Tuivasa probably going to have to be tentative, and then it's going to be tentative between the two. But Derrick Lewis, man, if he comes out the way he did against Chris Daukaus, where he just, like, chill, and explode, man, literally, it takes just one, man. So I'm just having a hard time. Like, no disrespect, because I love Bam Bam. I do think that if he wins this fight, brother, he's on top of the world. Like, you took a massive leap. You're talking about a title shot next. However, I just think that the skill sets are a little bit different, man. And I think that is as admirable as this is of a fight to take for Tai Tuivasa, and he does have a good chance of winning. It's a heavyweight fight, so one shot ends it all for both of these fighters. I think Derrick Lewis, man, nobody has really been able to give him trouble. Like, when Cyril Gane beat him, it was like a fatigue thing. It wasn't like I'm really hurt, like I can't fight anymore. He said it himself. He was like, yeah, bro, I was just fucking gassed out. I had nothing left. How do you see it?
Man, I see it basically the same way you do. I think Ty is going to come out on the front foot. Derrick's going to be kind of lulling him in, and then he's going to hit that blitz. And when Derrick Lewis hits that blitz, it's when he's most dangerous. So I definitely see that coming for him. But Bam Bam, if he's able to play it smart and he can, find something too where he uses Derrick Lewis's momentum against him, I don't know if we'll see a knockout. We might, who knows, especially with two big boys in there. It's kind of hard to not choose a knockout, but we've seen it happen in the past. So, man. Do I see this as a one-sided Tai Tuivasa walking him down the entire fight where Derrick Lewis is playing possum the entire time? No. But I do see that at the start and then a little bit more tentative after that once one person starts landing a little bit more bombs.
Okay. I mean, it'll be interesting either way, man. It's going to be a very fun fight. But I'll tell you, I'm going to roll with the Black Beast right here, brother. I'm going Derrick Lewis, and I'm going to take the under. The under is 1.5 rounds here. I think Derrick Lewis gets the job done via knockout against Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa. This is going to be fire versus fire, brother. Bam Bam has no choice but to step in the pocket and trade if he wants to get a dub, and someone's getting knocked out. I don't care who it is. Somebody's getting knocked out. If this fight goes to a decision, brother, are we not all going to be let down? You know what I mean?
They will be maybe not as let down as Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou, but right about there, literally right about there, man. Someone's going to sleep in this fight. Either way, you know, it's going to be two big boys fighting in a phone booth. It's what we love to see. Yeah. I'm a little surprised about the round 1 knockout. Not going to lie to you, Derek. That's a ballsy call on your part, man. But I do think a knockout's going to happen. Absolutely. And I'm actually going contrarian, man. I'm going with the underdog on this one. Very rarely, you know, it hurts me to go against the Black Beast, but I'm doing it for Bam Bam. I'm doing it for the Cuppy. I'm doing it for Tai Tuivasa, man. I'm going KO round 3. I think it's going to be a fun fight. It's this one, like I said, folks, this one is very hard to choose against. One of these dudes is going to be leaving consciousness. Do you put any thought, any hesitation into the fact that Tai Tuivasa was all game plan? We're standing and banging. We're knocking each other out. Derek Lewis come back and says, you never know, when the doors close, I might wrestle. Do you put any thought into that?
No, not at all. I think he just says nonsense, you know what I mean, in the beginning of the fight. He's a funny guy, you know what I mean? He's a goofy guy. What I do put stock in is, are we forgetting that this man is fighting in Houston, in his hometown, brother? Like, did we forget about that? You know what I'm saying? He dropped his last one.
Coming off an L?
He dropped his last one to Cyril Gane in Houston. He's coming back. You think he's just going to sit there and have another shit performance? Like, I really doubt it, man. And I'm banking on it, so I will be betting money 190 on Derek Lewis for a knockout victory. And listen, man, he's fighting in Houston, hometown favorite. So if it does go to a decision, I talked about the fishy judging earlier, man. You got to put that into account if it does go to the judges. But I do think Derek Lewis is going to come out motivated, strong. He doesn't have the same pressure because it's not fighting for a championship, not an interim belt or anything like that. This is just a scrap. This is a good old scrap. And these are two dudes who are down to scrap. Like Bam Bam, the one edge that I do give is that it seems like he would fight. I mean, maybe not a Derek Lewis, but it's like he'd be like, oh, you want to fight at the bar? Like, all right, whatever, let's scrap. You know what I mean? Like, he's down. Like, he's game. He's a homie like that. You know what I'm saying? So it should be a very, very fun fight. I think it's going to be a short fight, though. So, like I said, that's the pick on the co-main. Let's talk main event, brother. All right, man. It's the rematch. And this is like, I would tell you all the time when Israel Adesanya won the championship and then Robert Whittaker was all of a sudden getting overlooked. I was like, are people forgetting that this man, like, would probably be the champion if Israel Adesanya never came to the UFC? Like, are we forgetting about that? But because he's not, he said it in a bunch of interviews too. He's like, because I'm not over here clamoring for the belt and being like, give me the strap after every fight. People just imagine like, oh, he doesn't want to be a champion, da-da-da-da-da. Listen, man, Robert Whittaker is one of the best to do it. But he's fighting a dude who is a special talent, a very unique talent, possibly a once-in-a-generation type fighter in Israel Adesanya. And if you think about how Robert Whittaker has fought in his last couple of fights against Kelvin Gastelum and against Jared Cannonier, as opposed to how he fought Israel Adesanya the first time, that's not the same fighter, brother. This is a different guy. This is a completely different fighter. So I wanted to ask you right here off the bat, if Robert Whittaker is patient and he doesn't force in like he did in the first fight against Adesanya, and he forces Israel Adesanya to not be the counter striker but to lead the dance, do you think that can kind of incredibly increase his odds of winning this fight? What do you think?
Oh, yeah, man. Especially if you get, and it's going to be very hard to get a fighter like Izzy off his game. But if Robert Whittaker is able to kind of throw a wrench in that, have Izzy not necessarily flowing, but thinking, it's going to be his best opportunity, especially we all saw that KO, man, where Robert Whittaker's coming in and Izzy just lands this banger of a step back hook. If he can avoid that counter striking where he's not seeing it, because that's Izzy's best thing, man. The shots that you don't see coming, they're incredibly fast. If Robert Whittaker can avoid that, do a little bit more wrestling, maybe stay a little bit more patient on the outside, get on the inside, get the double leg, get something going, get into the ground, see the holes in Izzy's game that have been exploited. And Izzy's kind of hoping that's the same thing, man. He hopes that he can get taken down and show people that he doesn't have any holes in his ground game. But if Robert Whittaker can start to exploit those, maybe we see something different, a little bit more strategic of a fight from Robert Whittaker, which it's a hard one because you don't want to be too strategic, thinking about stuff, thinking about how you're going to do this and not necessarily executing. I think it'd be a better fight for Robert Whittaker. What you think?
Well, I think that, I mean, it could definitely increase his chance of winning if he, fights that different type of game plan, brother. But it's tough, man, against Izzy Adesanya. Here, the biggest thing that's tough for me is that the new Robert Whittaker, right? And this is something he's been doing for a while, but like, this patient Robert Whittaker, he's fighting off of the jab, right? He got that nice, crispy jab, and that jab oftentimes will turn into a sneaky left hook. You know what I mean? So jab, left hook, all coming from the hip, hard to see. The hard thing about it when you're fighting Adesanya is that he has a 7-inch reach disadvantage, 73 to 80 inches. So I'm just like, I want you to use the jab. I want you to have that success. But Israel Adesanya is a master of distance management, got the long arms, the long legs. And at the end of the day, the number one go-to move for Whittaker, who he hurts everybody with, is something that's going to be hard to be effective with against Adesanya, which is throwing the right kick behind the right cross. So right cross, right head kick, right back to back. He hurt Cannonier bad with that. You know what I mean? He hurts everybody with that. But it's just going to be difficult, man. He never really hurt Adesanya in the first fight. Even though when Adesanya did knock out Whittaker, he had to take a shot on the chin too. So it's like, Izzy does a lot of that bending backwards as opposed to a traditional guard, which is always a scary thing. Every time I see it, I'm just like, God damn, bro, I know you're good, but it's like Anderson Silva got caught too. Let's not forget. Anderson Silva got caught too, and he was the best to do it. So 31 versus 32 years old. Whittaker is younger than Adesanya, which is even crazier because, you would feel like he's been around a lot longer. But this is the big key right here. In Robert Whittaker's last fight against Kelvin Gastelum, right, which is, not the level of caliber opponent that, Israel Adesanya, even though Adesanya and Gastelum had a war, that was probably the closest fight Adesanya's had in his UFC career. It was a different level of fight in this fight, right? But the point that I want to make here is that Robert Whittaker had a career high in strikes and takedowns in that fight. 150 significant strikes and 4 takedowns with some really nice oblique kicks mixed in there, right? That's telling, man. And it makes me wonder, is Robert Whittaker going to try to expose the ground game of Israel Adesanya, work a lot of wrestling? Because prior to that, I think he's never notched more than 1 or 2 takedowns in any fight in the UFC. In his long UFC career, I mean, he's 14-3 in the UFC. Do you think Robert Whittaker is going to come out here and say, we're wrestling it up, doing all of that? Is that the game plan?
I think so, man. I think he's going to throw a different, not necessarily a different thing, but he's been evolving. And it's crazy to see that a dude who was the ex-champ is still evolving in his game plan. I think we're going to see that evolution come to fruition in his next fight, where he starts, like you said, working those teep kicks, working the kicks, working the unconventional stuff that isn't just the hands. Because Bobby Knuckles does have, obviously this is his nickname. He's got great hands, but when he's able to land the kicks, get you thinking about higher, lower, where are things going, then he can start working the takedowns. I think it's going to be a smart move for Robert Whittaker. And also, I like to see, as an Israel Adesanya fan, I would like to see that, because I want to see if Israel Adesanya can actually hold his chops on the ground. We saw it against who was it? It was his last fight, Jan Blachowicz, where Jan was just able to hold him down. But that's a size thing, That was and Jan is an amazing wrestler in his own right, so it was a skill thing as well. But it was more of a size thing, having to fight up a division. You've never felt that kind of weight, kind of that power before. Where Israel Adesanya, he has the weight advantage and the height advantage against Robert Whittaker. If he's able to stop the takedown, stop the stuff, he's going to have a great fight. But if Robert Whittaker is able to get on the inside, shoot those takedowns, get Izzy to where he's uncomfortable and keep him there, and that's the biggest note right there, keep Izzy on the ground, man, we're going to see something different right here. What you think?
I think that Robert Whittaker made a very interesting note, and he says that he basically said that he has better wrestling than Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori wasn't able to keep Adesanya on the ground. However, Marvin Vettori isn't the same caliber striker that Whittaker is. He's not able to mix in the strikes to get to the takedowns that a Whittaker can. I think listen, man, if he can keep Adesanya on the ground, that'd be very impressive. We haven't really seen anybody be able to do that besides Jan. And once again, like you said, man, going up to 205, who knows what Jan Blachowicz was at during the fight? You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a ridiculous weight discrepancy right there. But the overall movement in the big cage, man, that's going to play a big factor, right? I'm pretty sure they were in the big cage in the last fight either way, man. I just want to know how much of the ego is going to dissipate for Robert Whittaker. He says he's going to come in there egoless, right? His ego played a big factor in why he lost, is what he said, and it seemed like it because the way he was fighting, like he just had to take this dude's head off and all that good stuff, and it didn't really work out for him. So if he doesn't force the action, if he's patient, Israel Adesanya says he has something for him, but I do think that's his best path to victory, is be patient, work behind the jab a little bit, and he has a little bit of a higher striking output and land rate than Adesanya does. I mean, 4.68 at a 41% clip for Whittaker, 3.94 at a 50% clip for Adesanya. So Adesanya, he's a pick his shots, you know what I mean? He's a sniper. Do we see a finish in this fight?
At first, I thought yes, and then the more and more I thought about it, the more I think this one's going to decision. I think it's going to be a harder fight, and you almost kind of have to root for the guy who lost the first time.
Sure.
I would love to see a trilogy in this one, but I don't think I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think it's going to be a lot closer of a fight, a lot more calculated, a lot more patient from a Robert Whittaker, which gives him a better shot for victory.
Let me ask you this, man, because obviously if Robert Whittaker wins this, I'm not going to be super duper surprised. Like if there's anybody who can win, it's the dude who Adesanya took the belt from, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a Moreno Figueiredo in a way, kind of, not really, but in a way. But if Whittaker wins this fight, man, does he get the respect that he deserves back? Like I said, he's like overlooked, forgotten. Like people just like write him off. And I'm like, dude, this dude is like the best. Like he's literally number one and number two. It's Whittaker, Adesanya. I don't think there's any question about that. Does he get the respect?
Man, unfortunately, I don't think so. I think it's one of the Juliana Pena situations where everyone's like, it was just a fluke. Like, you didn't actually get it. It might funky scoring, I feel like, unfortunately, do I think he deserves it? And do I think he'll have the clout and everything? Yes, 100%. But general population and media, nah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the cool thing is this is neutral territory. Both of these dudes are Australia and New Zealand. So fighting in Houston, this is neutral. There is no favorite right here. But for Israel Adesanya, man, I will say like the pressure could be on, man, at this point. Because it's like he says his goal now is to lap the division. So let me flip the question. If he beats Whittaker for the second time, if he does it in a convincing decision or in a finish, I mean, what's left for Israel Adesanya? Who's left? Sean Strickland is probably the only guy, right? Like who's left? Obviously, Cannonier, Brunson, that's the talk, right? Whoever wins that is going to fight Izzy next after this fight if he can retain. But you got the winner of Brunson, Cannonier, and then you have Sean Strickland, and then you have nothing left. Like you've done everything in the division, even though it'll only be 5 title defenses, but you know what I mean? It'll only be 5 title defenses. I mean, has this man gone down as a Hall of Famer, more or less, to speak, if he gets the job done this weekend?
I think so, Derek, and you're right. The only 2 people in that entire list, in the top 10 that he hasn't fought yet, are Sean Strickland and Jared Cannonier. Those are literally it. So if he's able to close out Robert Whittaker, close out the other 2, that's a storied career, man. I think he's on his way to that Hall of Fame victory and that Hall of Fame path, especially with the style he has, man. He's just something different, a new thing that's kind of everybody falling in love with. I think he's a Hall of Fame fighter for sure.
So, AJ, the over and under here is on 4.5 rounds, and it's minus 280 for the over, plus 230 for the under. So, odds makers think that this is going to go to a decision. This is going to go 5 rounds. So, in what way can Robert Whittaker win this fight on points? Like, what does he need to do to win this fight on points?
Man, hold Izzy down. Izzy down on the ground. Because if you're in a striking contest with Israel Adesanya, you're going to get outpointed, if not knocked out. You're going to get cleaned up. Yeah. But if he's able to stay on, not necessarily on the outside, but stay in that inside zone, in the close calf kicks, kind of like a Justin Gaethje, stay on the inside of the boxing, where Izzy's not necessarily able to pop on you, a little bit better, a little bit closer. But I think the ground game's the way to go.
Okay, I agree with you, man. Let's see if Whittaker can get the job done. I like Israel Adesanya in this fight as much as it pains me. It's like one of those dudes where it's like you can't pick against him until he loses. And I picked for Izzy when he fought Blachowicz. That was, in hindsight, very naive move, you know what I mean? Just the weight discrepancy. But in middleweight, it's like nobody's been able to touch him, man. You know what I mean? So until we get somebody who can touch him, and given that the first fight was so definitive, like he knocked Whittaker out in 2 rounds, it's hard to pick against Izzy here. So I'm going to rock with Izzy. I'm going to go decision win. So I'll go the over on the 4.5 rounds on that one, man. But this is another one, just like the Brunson fight, where if Whittaker wins, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever because I'm very high on Robert Whittaker. I do believe in another reality where Israel Adesanya remains a kickboxer and never comes to the UFC. Robert Whittaker would have, at this point, right, probably he beat Yoel twice, right? So what is that? Probably he'll have like 4 or 5 title defenses himself. We would be talking about him as the Israel Adesanya, and he has the great personality. Hard to root against the man. Who do you got? Why? All that stuff, AJ.
Yeah, Derek, I think this one's going to be a lot closer of a fight. I'm actually rocking with the over. I'm going by decision, and I'm going Izzy, man. He's one of my favorite fighters. It's hard to choose against him. The style of everything, I guarantee you he was working on the ground game because when you're that high of a fighter and that almost egotistic, if somebody does something against you, holds you down in a fight, that's what I'm working on day one. We get back in the gym. Yeah, we working on this hard stuff. And don't forget, man, Izzy knocked Robert Whittaker out twice. Robert Whittaker was saved by the bell in the first round, and then got absolutely cleaned up in the second. It's just very hard to bet against a guy who's doing that kind of stuff and then fighting again. Do I think it's going to be a closer fight? Yes. Do I think it's going to go decision? Yes. And I'm still rocking with Israel Adesanya.
All right. So right on, man. We're basically the same on that one. And I just want to put this one out there, man. If like Robert Whittaker does lose, man, I still think there's zero stock drop for him, man. You lose to the best. You lost to him twice. Okay. You're definitively the #1 contender. You're kind of, you know what I mean, in that Caitlin Chukagian where it's like nobody else is beating her. I mean, Jessica Andrade, let's not, yeah, I mean, you have to count that at the end of the day. But like nobody else is beating her. It is what it is, man. It should be a fun night of fights, man. UFC 271, man. So go check it out at your sports bar. Go stream it, buy it, ESPN, all that good stuff, man. But AJ, one last piece of business we got to get to, man, and that's just talk to fight of the night, man. Lots of fun fights to choose from. Who do you got for fight of the night, my man?
Man, there are a lot of places you can go with fight of the night, man. I've been looking, William Knight, Maxim Grishin, Alex Perez, Matt Schnell. Ooh, there's a whole bunch of them, man. But me personally, I'm rocking with the 35ers. I'm going Kyler Phillips versus Marcelo Rojo. That's going to be a banger of a scrap, man. Fight of the night written all over it. Flashy stuff. Maybe it doesn't go to a decision. We get a KO, but I still think it's going to be a back and forth banger. Who you got?
All right, brother, I got to go with the fight right underneath that to open up the main card, Bobby King Green versus Nasrat Haqparast. And the reason why is because Bobby Green is an entertainer. He says it all the time. He says, I want to come here and I want to collect 50 G's every time I'm in the ring. Nasrat Haqparast is going to be a great dance partner because Bobby's going to be talking to him. Tensions are going to rise. They're going to get heated, probably start scrapping a little bit more because Bobby Green going to hit you with the, oh, no, that was nothing. Oh, yeah, you saw that? You know what I'm saying? Kind of like that Corey Sandhagen, like body shot. Ooh, that hurt, didn't it? Like, yeah, brother, you love that. I love to see it at least, my man. So those are both of our picks for fight of the night. Both are coming on the main card, so you're gonna have to tune into the pay-per-view, folks. Listen, man, always a pleasure breaking down these fights, my man. This is one of the cards that's got me really, really, really excited, and I'm even more excited to talk about the aftermath on it come Monday, folks. So Mondays and Fridays, 8 a.m. You know where to find us. Preview show is on Friday, post show on Monday. Short clips drop at noon, and you can find everything at our YouTube channel at Bloody Water Podcast, or type in Free Thinkers Club or Bloody Water Podcast on YouTube. You're going to find us either way. But if you don't want to do that route, just head over to our website, bloodywaterpodcast.com. You'll literally find everything. Don't forget to rate us 5 stars on all of your favorite streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that. Like the show, subscribe. That's enough for my spiel. AJ, you got any last words for the people?
Folks, if you've been rocking, you know that this is the hub to come to for the most in-depth broken down stuff. We got stuff over here that Uncle Chael forgets about, that the MMA junkies forget about. We've been rocking, and it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's hard to do this day in, day out, week in, week out. But you know who's bringing you 2 shows a week with a whole bunch of clips, with the fire, with the bets. Come on, share it with your friends. It helps us out a lot. I get a lot of comments, a lot of people, showing the love. But I'd like to see more of the homies actually spread in and out. I had a friend the other day say, "Oh, you're on Spotify?" Like, bro, of course we're on Spotify. We're everywhere. We're going global, and it wouldn't be without y'all. So please start sharing it a little bit more. We see the love, and we appreciate it so much. Rocking with us since day one. We got some love for you. Also, go buy your merch, man. I just picked up some of my own, so go buy your merch. Make sure you hit them with the discount code BWP10. Let us know what you think. Hit us in the comments. Let us know how much money you making and what picks you got. We'd love to see it.
Absolutely. And if you do got your merch and all that good stuff, man, don't forget to tag us on Instagram, Bloody Water Podcast, man. Show it off a little bit, represent, support. You know what I'm saying? Listen, BWP10, 10% off all merch. What are we talking about, man? That's love right there. AJ said it best. I couldn't say it any better myself. So with that being said, folks, I think that's it for us. We'll talk to you guys next time. All right, folks. Peace.